Rev up your engines! Lexus LS400s, the original Japanese luxury car. What's the truth about them? Well, here's a 98, relatively old. The guy just bought it. He only paid 4,500 bucks. It's in pretty good shape, but it shows you the truth about these Japanese luxury cars. Now, back in the 1980s when Toyota decided to design these, they spent over $1 billion. It's a lot of money back then. It is today, but a lot more money back then. They sent some Japanese guys to California to study what rich Americans wanted, then they built it. This is an older one. It's pretty much the same style as the original ones were. It's got a naturally aspirated V8 engine. It's rear-wheel drive. And as you can see, it's made in Japan. But not just any place in Japan. They're still made in the same factory in Japan. The only one in the world that makes the LS400s. These people are fanatics about their cars. When they build the engines, they test it on a dyno, and the engineer, he even uses a stethoscope to listen to the engine. That's why these things last so long. They were the first mass production car to use laser welding systems. When they started making them, they wanted the fit and finish to be twice as close as any of their other previous cars. And hilariously enough, years later, they applied the same manufacturing even to the lowly Corolla. If you look at a lowly Corolla, it still has body panels that fit correctly, unlike, say, Teslas. Now you might think, what are you going to get for 4,500 bucks in a luxury car? Well, he got this in its pretty good shape. Now, mind you, the guy's not stupid. He took his time. He drove from Tennessee to Chicago to look at one. Guy said it was in good shape. It was misfiring. He wanted 2,500 bucks more than he paid for this one, but he eventually found this one. Now, it's a young guy who bought it, but he was smart. He brought a scan tool. Didn't have any codes. Catalytic converter didn't smell. He road tested. It shifted right. If you get one of these and it clunks in the transmission, or doesn't run right, or the check engine light's on, or if the evil swine took the check engine light bulb out, you gotta have a scan tool. Then you can see. You don't get any trouble codes on these. Their self-analysis systems are great. Odds are, it's in pretty good shape. Now, the one downfall this particular engine has, it's a big V8 engine, but it has a rubber timing belt. But as we check here, it's had the timing belt changed at 164,124 miles. Check inside, see what it's got on it. It's got 178,000 miles. So don't have to worry about that for quite some time. So you got a real good deal. Since it's got that new belt on, it's an expensive job. Most guys will charge around $1,000, but it's been done. So you don't have to worry about it. And it was done correctly because there's no check engine light. If guys do it wrong, you'll often get codes because the crankshaft and camshaft no longer align correctly, and it'll trip codes for them. This doesn't. It was done right. Now, it's a 24-year-old car. Let's start it up. Starts right up, and listen to that engine. Quiet. The only thing I can really hear is a little of the cam rolling. You can barely hear it at all. They build these engines right. They test them right. They can last an awful long time. The advantage of this older one is, look at the brakes. Regular brake booster. This was before they went to the really high-tech stuff with all computerized, where you gotta buy the brake master cylinder and the activation system for it. That's all computerized. Those things can cost over 2,000 bucks just in parts, and they have to be reprogrammed. This is a regular brake master cylinder with a regular booster. It's still all original equipment and it still works fine. The whole thing about this car was it's a luxury, quiet car. Look at it. Doesn't shake at all. It's old as the hills. It's still smooth and quiet. When they built these things, they built them tight. They insulated them correctly. These were true luxury cars. They decided, hey, what do American people want in a luxury car? A V8 with a rear-wheel drive. Now, over the time, they've changed things here and there. They have all-wheel drive ones, but they hit the nail on the head. Because the second year they were out, they outsold Mercedes, Audi, BMW, all those guys. That fast, they became bestsellers, because they were really well-made luxury cars. Take it for a spin. Now, granted, it's an old car, so there's no backup camera. You're not gonna get that. Of course, if you want, you can easily add one on. If you don't want to stick one here and leave the stock, you can get one that goes on the rear view mirror and have a backup camera there. It's no big deal. Now, as we take off, it is one smooth car. Even though it's 24 years old, it still corners like a flying carpet, just glides through. As old as it is, the suspension's still in tip-top shape. And of course the brakes, Still work, don't make a sound, and stop perfectly. So let's take it on the little twisties here. It's a luxury car, but it's not like an old Cadillac that drives like a boat. It's got pretty firm suspension and steering. You let go of the wheels, it tracks perfectly straight. Let's take it to a stop, and let's see what this old thing can do. On your mark, get set. Listen to the power in that thing. The smooth shifting, as old as it is. These things are just a joy to drive. I wouldn't think twice about getting this car that the guy paid $4,500 for, drive to California and back. Let me tell you, these things are all made in the same factory in Japan. They still are. They are solid. They last. Now, yeah, as they age, repairs can get expensive. They don't break all that often, especially these old ones. The newer ones, like I say, they got some super expensive computer parts, electronic braking systems that can cost a fortune. But these old ones, if they're not all worn out, hey, doesn't have all that electronic stuff on it, it's got enough. You're not going to be bothered with all that crap. It's just a fun car to drive that's still ultra dependable. Now, of course, they're not much for gas mileage. That's gliding. And of course, as you accelerate and decelerate, it goes up and down. Sometimes it says you're getting 3.9 miles a gallon when you're really flooring it. You take your foot off the gas, sometimes it says 60. But in reality, this thing gets about 16 miles a gallon in a city and 23 on a highway if you baby it. And compared to modern cars, it's not outrageous horsepower. It's 290, but it's a luxury car and it's heavy. Makes a nice noise, takes off quick enough when you step on it. You want a car that's this heavy and rides this well, you're not going to get phenomenal gas mileage. That's just the way that it goes. As was the case with most heavy V8 engines. I've had customers in the past who didn't know, and they bought a used LS400. They said, oh, they're Toyotas, they run good, they get good gas mileage. They should have done a little research, because I've had customers buy these things, and then they complain about the gas mileage. And I said, you should have done some research before you bought it, because if you care about gas mileage, you want to get like an ES300 like my wife's that gets a lot better gas mileage than this big old V8 engine does. But these V8 engines can last forever as long as you put timing belts on them, say every 100,000 miles or so. Sure paid off. This old engine still runs like a well-oiled machine. No bumps, no clunks, corners on a dime. $4,500 for this car? Hey, give me 3 or 4 of them at that price. So here we go, a car that was 60 grand new. He picked it up for $4,500. And I'd say, I don't know, it's at least 90% of what it was in the beginning. So he got a heck of a deal on it. A new one's gonna cost you 76 grand, and it doesn't have this beautiful front. It has those horrible screaming mouth ones that I cannot stand. I think it's the ugliest thing. Now, I do have to say one thing for the Japanese. They build things excellent. They design them right. When it comes to their ideas of what looks good and what doesn't, I think maybe they should hire some Americans for that style point. Now, this was a luxury, conservative car when it was brand new. They should just stick to that and stop putting all these ridiculous things on it, if you ask me. I mean, this has plastic on it, but most of it's still metal. It's a more solid built car. And yeah, it gets bad gas mileage. What the heck? It's a luxury car. Thousands and thousands, $4,500 versus the price new. You can buy an awful lot of gasoline with that. And it's not horrid. It's just, that's how a V8 engine's gonna do in any car in the real world. Don't believe any of these EPA estimates. They're just estimates. Real world, they're gonna get worse gas mileage. It's a heavy vehicle, it's gotta pull itself. You're not gonna get phenomenal gas mileage. But something that runs this good, you're not buying a $4,500 luxury car and driving it 30,000 miles a year. I mean, you could in this thing if you wanted to. For that kind of money, with that kind of luxury, you really can't beat it. So now you know a little bit more about LS400s. Why an older one could be a pretty sweet deal if you find a nice one like this. Just do like he did. Bring a scan tool. Check it out. You don't see any problems? You road tested it, runs as good as this one does? Snap it up. It'll last for a really long time. You ever get tired of it? You can easily sell it on to somebody else. They run so good for so long, you really can't beat them. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Movie Time and TV says it is true to park your car, you must pull the handbrake in neutral, then in park. Well, that actually is a smarter way of doing it. You don't have to. But let's say you live in San Francisco where it's real hilly and big inclines. The best thing to do is to stop, put your car in neutral, then there's no strain on the transmission. Put on the handbrake. Then the brake is holding the car. Then put it in park. Because if you put it in park first and let go of the brake before you put the handbrake on, the prawl inside your transmission, it's a little gear, it grabs and keeps the transmission from slipping and rolling. Well, you all that strain on that prawl, you're on a big hill, eventually that stuff can break. If you use the neutral and handbrake first, then there's no strain on it at all, and it will last longer. It's actually a very good practice to do that. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.